That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about our top 10 favorite films of 2024.
That's right.
That's right.
This was a great year from film.
It was, considering, all of the problems and the strikes that kind of had somewhat of an effect on release schedules and whatnot. But again, as always, because everybody's complaining about the death of cinema, that's ad nauseum. But there are always excellent films from around the world if you're really looking.
Even I had a difficult time whittling down 10. And people might notice that the order in which our lists are arranged don't necessarily reflect the score sometimes. I know for myself, I went with more of an emotional reaction to the films because I had so many I thought were excellent. Yes,
I agree. And again, that's why we say favorite, because it's a personal meaning, it's a personal opinion, it's what I feel.
Well, as we're wont to do, particularly you, let's start with some honorable mentions.
Yes, even that was hard to whittle down. But in no particular... Well, I have to give a shout out to The Beast and Last Summer, which were on my top 10 list last year, and those came out theatrically this year.
Okay.
But The Beast, that's the only film I've given a 5 to in a while, I think. And the only release that I saw this year that I gave a 4.5 to was April by Dea Kulumbegashvili at the Venice Film Festival, but that hasn't come out theatrically, so I did not include it on this year's list, though I wanted to. But in no particular order, some honorable mentions. Do Not Expect Too Much from The End of the World. Caligula, The Ultimate Cut.
Oh, wow.
Problemista.
Work.
We Grown Now.
We are.
And Femme.
Oh, nice. Okay, mine. Blitz. The Instigators. I know people didn't like that one.
I enjoyed that film. I didn't really understand the harsh backlash against that.
September 5.
Okay, yes.
Mads. And Love Lies Bleeding.
There you go.
All right, let's start with our number 10 spot. Mine?
Yes.
Hitman by Richard Linklater.
Starring Glenn Powell.
Oh my God. He's so charming in that movie. I think the writing is so clever. I just had a great time.
Yeah, very. And I mean, I like Richard Linklater, but it was such a surprise. I was not expecting that. Very charming.
I suspect the way you snickered at my number 10 that you have a couple of ties.
I have one tie.
What's your number 10?
My number 10 is a tie.
Oh.
I think that you would find...
If you give a bitch an inch, they'll take a mile.
Isn't that true? But it thematically makes sense. I have The Girl with the Needle, directed by Magnus Van Horn, which premiered at Cannes, starring Trina Dearholm, and with The Devil's Bath, directed by Severin Fiala and Veronika Franz, Austrian filmmakers who you might remember did Goodnight Mommy about a decade ago. I think they're both very thematic, and while they pertain to issues from the past dealing with women's access to healthcare in a nutshell, I think that they have strong ties to how things still are today, because of course abortion, childcare, religion affect these women in these films disastrously, and they're both very depressing, beautifully shot, and they leave you with an after effect that I think is unforgettable.
Okay, my number 9 is The Brutalist by Brady Corbet. In our review, I joked about the runtime, but it feels epic. I think the direction is spectacular. The performances from
Adrian Brody
and
Guy Pearce
are out of this world. It felt like an event. There's an intermission.
It feels like the way cinema used to be, that I think when we're reintroduced to how it can be, it's almost shocking. But, considering the budget that he had on that, and the time and care, he co-wrote it with his wife, Mona Fastvold, who's also a filmmaker. I mean, just incredible.
Yes.
My number 9 is Smile 2.
Ooh.
Directed by Parker Finn, which I believe I did like more than the first Smile, even though that was enjoyable as well. But I think Naomi Scott and the care taken with the soundtrack and just the whole theme of dealing with how we transfer trauma, I guess, to others. I don't know. I've had this soundtrack on since I've seen it in October.
Oh, wow.
I just loved it.
My number 8 film is Thelma by Josh Margolin. The June Squibb as the lead is just so adorable. And the film is so charming. I think, well, I had already known what's his name from Gladiator 2?
Fred Hetchinger?
Yeah, I think I already knew of him from White Lotus season 2, but I thought he was really cute in this film. It just oozes with charm.
He might have been season 1.
Season 1, okay. But yeah.
Parker Posey as a lovely supporting role. One of Richard Roundtree's last.
That's right.
I mean,
there's a scene with a chase on one of those little electric scooters that is just so adorable.
Yeah, it was very sweet. And also dealing with kind of serious issues.
Yes.
My number 8 is Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino. Again, speaking of soundtrack, the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross sound, oh my God. I've also had this on all year since I saw it, when was that, in April? But I really think Zendaya is kind of perfection in this. And Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor, the kind of queer subtext going on, I also find very interesting, especially from a queer filmmaker that is, I think, holding back in that realm, especially since he had another film this year, Queer, which I also really liked. It didn't make my list, but I don't know. I think that is, and I've talked to a lot of people that didn't love it as well, but I don't know. It stayed with me.
My number 7 choice is The Substance by Coralie Fargier. It's just absurd, grotesque, but also sobering. I think the screenplay is so interesting. It's a joy to watch Demi Moore in this role. And her transformation, the practical effects.
Margaret Qualley, a really awfully creepy, over-the-top Dennis Quaid. I mean, the whole film is kind of over-the-top, and this has a great soundtrack too. Because I saw this at Cannes, and I still remember that feeling as that booming score ends over the credits, kind of being in heaven, walking back to in a daze to my flat. Yeah, it's nice to see Demi really kind of tear into something. And I think that this was a great year for women directors telling stories that are really kind of daring and unnerving, and this, of course, was one of them. My number 7 is The Seed of the Sacred Fig, directed by Mohammad Rasoulof, which competed in Cannes. It won a special prize. He had to sneak it into the country because the Iranian government did not want the film to be shown. And speaking of a film for female women-led narratives, I mean, this is certainly up there. Iranian cinema is, over the past 20 years been consistently pretty strong, but this is, I think, is my favorite Iranian film since A Separation by Asghar Farhadi. But footnote to My Favorite Cake and World War III, which are also pretty excellent as well. But the 3 women that are the mother and 2 daughters, Sohaila Golestani, Masa Rostami, and Sitara Maleki, by the time we get to the end of that film, it is, I don't know, I think it's intense and very meaningful considering where it comes from.
My number 6 choice is Night Bitch by Marielle Heller. I thought the writing of the main character, played by Amy Adams, was superb. She felt so relatable as this stay-at-home mom who's losing her mind, basically.
We talked a lot about that film even after our review, in that even though it's dealing in a way specifically with motherhood, that character also does feel really universal about what it's like to, be kind of paint yourself into a corner, and how do you get out of that, and isn't it possible to do so?
It makes me sad that as of this recording, it's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, because I just thought that characterization felt so relatable. And
I think that's the importance of criticism, is not following the pack, is being, clear and honest about what it is that you find interesting or fascinating or compelling, because we don't all have the same opinions. My number 6 is All We Imagine Is Light by Payal Kapadia, which I believe won the second place prize at Cannes. Kind of a love letter to Mumbai, but also the lead character played by Connie Kuzruti, also just another formidable performance, very insular performance. And it's detailing this nurse's relationship with her roommate and kind of their relationships with men and the city. And it's a lot of walking and talking, but just captivating.
My number 5 choice is The Girl with the Needle by Magnus von Horn. I promised myself I wouldn't mention a certain filmmaker who owns his own studio and makes shitty movies, but when I think about The Girl with the Needle and how beautiful it is, certainly shot with a minimal budget, and then the trauma involved, because aforementioned filmmaker likes to include traumatic plot points. But it's like, this film feels like the ultimate gag when it comes to that subject or style of filmmaking, but it's done so beautifully.
Well, trauma is a very real thing, but it's not being exploitative about it.
Right. So, yeah. Storytelling at its finest.
I agree. My number 5 is Emilia Pérez, directed by Jacques Audiard, which won the 4 principal characters the Best Actress prize at Cannes, which I think was a strange workaround to just focus on the titular character played by Carla Sofia Gascon. But I've seen this twice now. There was immediate backlash to it when it came out, but I'm very happy to see that it has made it to the awards arena, because it is interesting. Obviously is not a good enough word to describe it, but it is so many different genres and elements crammed into one, and again with 4 strong, compelling women at the center of it. I don't know, it's an experience.
Yeah. My number 4 choice is Vermilio by Maura del Poro. I thought this film was so beautiful. The story set like post World War II Italian like mountain village, that I remember saying that it felt like an art house Brady Bunch, but it's not silly in any way. It just like the drama is so well crafted. I felt like I was taken to another place.
Well, and that is a great film that's a visual representation of characterization as well, because it's all about these young women who are isolated, and this father figure that has all these children. The cinematography is amazing. It's a film that you can feel this, because it's set over a season change, like a year. And it's a film that you can almost like smell and feel. Like there's a texture to it, but yeah, it's beautiful.
I highly recommend people find that one.
My number 4 is Babygirl, directed by Halina Reijn, starring a fantastic Nicole Kidman, who won Best Actress in Venice for her performance. It's also kind of a controversial film because in one sense I think it's not heavy hitting enough for art house enthusiasts who would rather see it be kind of in the Isabelle Huppert territory of Piano Teacher or Elle. Speaking of which, Huppert was the jury president that awarded her this prize. But at the same time, I find the conversations kind of troubling about it. Some people accusing it as saying that infidelity is okay, and it's like especially in the U.S., collectively we're so draconian towards our understanding of human sexuality, and that the continual repression, especially of women. Things happen, things bubble up, and maybe the rigidity of monogamy isn't that somebody cheats and the whole, throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is about being an adult. This is about being mature and having pertinent conversations. But the Nicole Kidman and her performance and the relationship she develops with Harris Dickinson, it's awkward, it's weird. Again, everybody has the different approach and different fantasies and different wants and needs. But I think that for an English language film to do this with these actors, I don't know. It's still kind of, there's a shocking element to it that I get to see Nicole Kidman doing this, and that people are going to see this film because she is in it, and therefore hopefully force conversation, because that to me is the point. But I highly enjoyed the film.
My number 3 choice is Problemista, directed by Julio Torres. It's weird, queer, funny, which is right up my alley.
Sweet.
And then you have Tilda Swinton in this like transcendent role. She's just playing this. I don't know how to describe her. She's like a beautiful monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to describe her. She's imperious, self-centered, but not unkind, however. Fascinating film, though. My number 3 is The Brutalist, which, you know, we've already talked about quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be said enough what Brady Corbet has been able to do. And I was a fan of his 2 previous features, Childhood of a Leader and Vox Lux. And I know Vox Lux is probably a little more divisive, and there's maybe arguably a camp quality to it. But I think that his visual and storytelling approach are, you know, they harken back to 70s new American cinema tropes that, you know, we would be much better to resurrect than how we're going forward with a lot of mainstream cinema in this country.
My number 2 choice is Smile 2 by Parker Finn. You already talked about it, but I think the fact that it starts off with a bang and just keeps going until the very end, I feel like of all of the movies I saw this past year, if I had to pay to see a movie, I feel like this one would have given me the most for my money.
Well, you know, films about pop stars starring people that are not, and then kind of crafting original music that feels like it could be a pop song. I mean, you could also compare this to the just mentioned Vox Lux, but I don't know. I think just it's firing on all cylinders and has an emotional, humane depth to it that is really rare for a genre film, much less a sequel. My number 2 is Anora, directed by Sean Baker, which of course took home the Palme d'Or at Cannes. I've long been a fan of Sean Baker's work. Ever since I saw Starlet, I think that was my first introduction to him. You know, Tangerine, I think, is one of the most exceptional films of the past decade, independent or otherwise. I don't know, to me, I think I mentioned this in our review, that to me it's like the Anti-Graduate, also going back to kind of new American auteur sense of director-led stories, and a fantastic lead performance from Mikey Madison. Yura Borisova, who I've seen in many films, including Compartment Number 6, that he's really good in, just brings this energy that is, I don't know, it's compelling, it's heartfelt, and it ends in that way that Sean Baker seems able to bring us to this precipice of humanity and then just lead us off into the credits.
My number 1 choice is Emilia, Pérez, directed by Jacques Audiard. The words I used to describe it were explosive, fierce, heartbreaking, and bold. It does feel like, I mean, to craft a film that weaves in so many genres, it would seem, is just so impressive. And then by someone who, you know, people criticize for not having ownership of the cultures or demographics that people say he's exploiting. But I thought it was a really gripping story.
I think context is always important, and sometimes we turn ourselves off to a certain sense of humanity by being rigid about those kind of things. I
also thought the music, considering I just watched a couple recently that I didn't care for the music. I thought like the dance numbers, the production of it all, the lead performance by
Carla Sofia Gaston
is so impressive.
Yes. Again, she reminds me of Fanny Ardant on screen, just luminous. And something that I've never said about the music, but I keep thinking, is it kind of reminded me of West Side Story, the Epiphania song. Which, it reminded me of the Maria song in West Side Story. But yeah, I don't know. It's brimming with life. My number 1 is a film that you've already brought up, but after rewatches of several of these, it's got to be The Substance by Coraline Farjat. You have to remember, this is also a sophomore film. Universal asked her to change the ending and she refused, which I think is fantastic, which of course is how it ended up at somebody like a distributor like Mubi was able to buy it, and I think are all the better for it because, you know, cinema is artistry. So the studio interference that mangles so many things, I'm so glad that this was left untouched, because even though it is long, I mean, it is a journey worth sitting through multiple times.
Agreed. Well, as usual, if any of the winners want a trophy, we're happy to send one. Anything else?
No.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.